I'm 35 years old, and until not long ago, I thought I had it all figured out, married to the love of my life, raising a bright, funny, kind-hearted boy named Adam, who I believed was my son. For 14 years, I woke up every single day with one purpose: to be the best father and husband I could be. I never thought I'd be the kind of man to break down and cry on the floor of his empty house. But life has a way of reminding you just how fragile your world really is. Rebecca and I got married young. She was pregnant, and I never questioned whether the baby was mine. I loved her. I wanted a family. So I stepped up, no hesitation. I was there for every single moment. Adam's first breath, his first tooth, his first word. I held him when he was sick, cheered him on when he played soccer, stayed up late helping with science fair projects, and worked 2 jobs to make sure he never felt like we didn't have enough. I used to think the sleepless nights were the hardest part of fatherhood. Turns out, nothing compares to what it feels like when the people you love most in this world walk out the door and leave a note behind. Yesterday, I came home from work like I always do, tired, but excited to have dinner with my family. But something felt wrong. The lights were off. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No sound of Adam's laughter. No clatter from the kitchen. I called their names, but only silence answered. And then I saw it, a folded piece of paper on the nightstand, in Rebecca's handwriting. It wasn't long, just a page, but every word on that paper shattered me. She said she was leaving, taking Adam, and that I wasn't his biological father. I must have read that note 20 times, thinking maybe I was misunderstanding. Maybe it was some cruel prank or a mistake. But no, she spelled it out clearly. Before we got together, she'd had a brief fling with another man. And when she found out she was pregnant, she convinced herself the baby was mine. She convinced herself. And I built an entire life around a lie I didn't even know existed. She said Adam's real father had come back into her life and wanted to be part of his son's future. And now, just like that, she had decided it was best for Adam to get to know him. She wrote that they were leaving to start a better life, one with more money, more opportunity, more everything. She said Adam was excited to meet his biological father. Those words. A better life. As if what I gave him, the love, the effort, the sacrifices, that didn't count. As if I was some placeholder until the man with the fancy wallet showed up to collect his prize. I sat there on our bed for hours. My son's childhood room was silent down the hall. His soccer cleats still by the door. The family photos still on the shelves. And yet, he was gone. No goodbye. No conversation. No closure. Just a note. I tried to call. I tried to text. Nothing. Phone's off. I even drove to her parents' house thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd be there. But no sign of them. I felt like a ghost walking through my own life. A father, without a son. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the question that kept haunting me. Was any of it ever real? Did Adam ever look at me and know, deep down, that I wasn't his dad? Did Rebecca ever plan to tell me? After a few days of sitting in that quiet house, surrounded by memories and unanswered questions, something inside me snapped. I'd been heartbroken, blindsided, devastated, but I wasn't going to let them erase me from Adam's life without a fight. I may not have his blood, but I had 14 years of scraped knees, bedtime stories, birthday candles, and whispered, I love yous. That had to mean something. I hired a lawyer. It wasn't easy financially or emotionally, but I needed to know if I had any rights. My attorney was honest from the start. Since I wasn't Adam's biological father, the legal terrain would be steep, messy, uncertain. But he said if we could prove that I'd been a consistent parental figure, we might stand a chance. It was a long shot. Still, I had to try. When the court hearings started, I was prepared to tell the truth, to lay my soul bare. But I wasn't prepared for how brutal Rebecca and that man, David, I would later learn his name, were willing to be. They came with a team of high-priced lawyers, psychologists, character witnesses. David was wealthy, some kind of entrepreneur or investor, and he wasn't afraid to throw his money around to paint himself as the better option. They called me financially unstable, said my 2 jobs proved I was absent. They claimed Adam needed a more structured life with better resources, better schools, more opportunity. They twisted every loving sacrifice I ever made into a weakness. They even produced witnesses who testified, under oath, that I'd been neglectful. Friends of theirs who said I was cold, distracted, that I snapped at Adam. None of it was true. But when you're standing alone, and they've built a fortress around their lies, it's hard to breathe. I sat in that courtroom day after day, Watching Rebecca, a woman I once trusted more than anyone, stare straight ahead like I was nothing but a mistake she needed to erase. And David? He never once looked ashamed, just smug, like he'd already won. I was losing hope. I won't lie. There were nights I went home and stared at Adam's empty bed, wondering if I was just dragging this out for nothing. But every time I thought about giving up, I'd remember that little boy running into my arms after his first soccer goal, yelling, "Dad, did you see that?" I had seen it. I had seen everything. And I wasn't about to let go. Then, everything changed. The judge called Adam to the stand. When the judge announced he wanted to hear from Adam directly, my heart nearly stopped. This was it. This was the moment everything could break, or everything could begin to heal. I was terrified. What if they had poisoned him against me? What if he stood up there and called David Dad? What if all those years I poured into raising him meant nothing now? Adam walked into the courtroom wearing a dark blazer that looked a little too big for him. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeted in his lap, and he avoided eye contact with everyone at first, except for me. Just before he sat down, he glanced my way, and for a brief second, our eyes locked. There was something there, something familiar, something that gave me hope. The judge asked him to speak freely. No pressure. Just tell the truth. And Adam did. With a steady voice that seemed to grow stronger by the minute, my son said, "I want to live with my dad." There was silence in the room, a pause thick with tension. Then he added, "My real dad. The one who raised me." I couldn't hold back the tears. They welled up instantly, and I wasn't alone. Even the court reporter dabbed her eyes. Adam continued. He talked about our camping trips. How I always stayed up with him during thunderstorms because he was scared. How I coached his little league team even though I didn't know a thing about baseball. How I never missed a game, even when I was exhausted from work. Then his voice changed, more serious, more raw. He said, "My mom and David told me to lie. They told me to say my dad didn't care about me, that he was never around, that he was angry all the time. But it wasn't true. None of it. They told me what to say in court, and I tried. I really did. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't lie about my dad." The courtroom froze. He went on to describe overhearing Rebecca and David at night, whispering strategies, talking about how to discredit me. He told the judge how they even talked about bribing one of my coworkers to say I complained about being a father. He mentioned the teachers they tried to influence, the lines they wanted him to repeat, the emotional pressure they put on him. And then he said something that will stay with me forever. "My dad is the one who taught me how to tell the truth, even when it's hard. So I'm telling the truth now." I didn't realize I was holding my breath until that moment. The courtroom was silent. No one spoke. Rebecca looked like she'd been slapped. David's smug expression was gone. The judge leaned forward and asked Adam a few more questions, gentle ones, but pointed. And Adam answered every single one with clarity and conviction. When it was over, Adam glanced at me again. I smiled through tears, giving him a small nod. He just saved our future. The days following Adam's testimony felt like a slow-motion blur. Every hour stretched like an eternity. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Adam's words in my head, over and over. "My dad is the one who taught me to tell the truth." That sentence had become both my anchor and my torment. I was hopeful, but I was also terrified. I knew the system didn't always favor emotional truth over legal facts. And David? He still had resources, power, influence. I braced for the worst while praying for something I no longer knew how to define. Justice, maybe, or just a sliver of peace. Then the day came. The courtroom was packed. Rebecca sat on one side, lips pressed into a thin, defiant line. David sat beside her, jaw clenched, suit perfect. I was on the other side with my lawyer, hands trembling despite myself. Adam was seated near the back, his eyes locked on me the moment I turned around. He gave a small, brave smile. It steadied me more than I could express. The judge entered and everyone rose. When we sat again, he began reading from a stack of papers, notes, legal references, findings. But I barely heard any of it until his tone shifted. While biological connection is a significant factor in custody considerations, it is not the only factor. A child's emotional, mental, and developmental well-being carries equal, if not greater, weight. I held my breath. This court finds that the respondent, though not the biological parent, has demonstrated over 14 years of sustained commitment, love, and responsibility for the child in question, Adam. The testimony of the minor, as well as corroborating evidence and patterns of care, support the conclusion that this bond is genuine, irreplaceable, and in the best interest of the child. Rebecca stiffened. The court is gravely concerned about attempts to coach the minor's testimony and manipulate evidence. Such conduct raises questions about the petitioner's judgment and their ability to act in the child's best interest. David looked like he'd swallowed something sharp. Therefore, it is the court's decision to award full custody of Adam to the respondent. Visitation rights for the petitioner are to be determined at a later hearing, pending psychological evaluation and supervised arrangements. I froze. My lawyer turned to me with tears in his eyes and whispered, "You did it." I didn't even notice I was crying until Adam ran down the aisle and flung his arms around me. I buried my face in his shoulder, sobbing openly now. For the first time in months, maybe years, I let the joy rush in. We had won, not just in court, but in something deeper. We had held on to each other. Against betrayal, against manipulation, against everything meant to tear us apart, Adam chose me. The judge concluded the proceedings and adjourned, but I barely registered it. I was too lost in the moment, holding my son like he was the only thing anchoring me to the earth. And maybe he was. The courthouse steps were still warm from the sun as Adam and I walked out, hand in hand. I don't think I had realized how heavy the air inside had been until we stepped into the daylight. It was like breathing fresh air after years underwater. The press of emotions didn't disappear overnight. Grief doesn't evaporate with a gavel strike. But in that moment, I wasn't a man broken. I was a father who had just been seen, believed, chosen. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Paperwork, logistics, financial reshuffling. Adam and I moved back into our old home. It was quiet at first, awkward even. We were both carrying wounds, trying not to bump into each other's scars. But little by little, we found our rhythm again. Our first dinner back? Burnt grilled cheese and overcooked spaghetti. Adam tried to pretend it wasn't that bad. I laughed so hard I cried. We started new routines. Tuesday movie nights. Saturday pancakes. I let Adam pick a new paint color for his room. He chose a ridiculous neon green. I hated it, but I helped him paint anyway, because it was his space, his choice. We talked more than we ever had before. About Rebecca. About lies. About what family really means. I never pressured him to feel a certain way. I just listened. Sometimes he'd open up. Other times, he'd just sit next to me in silence. That was enough. Therapy helped. For both of us. Adam had nightmares at first. Dreams where he was forced to choose, or where I disappeared entirely. His therapist said it was normal. Eventually, the dreams started to fade. He started sleeping better, laughing louder. He asked me once, in a quiet voice, "Do you think I'll always feel split between two families?" I told him maybe, but that doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you've seen what real love looks like and what it doesn't. As for Rebecca and David, they haven't reached out. The court allowed supervised visitation, but Adam declined every time. I told him the door would always be open, when and if he was ready. But I wasn't going to push. He had been pushed enough. Money's still tight. I took on freelance work and cut back hours so I could be home when Adam gets out of school. We don't have the latest tech or fancy vacations, but we have peace. And that's something money can't fake. We're planning a camping trip this summer. Just us. Back to the same spot we used to visit when he was little. Adam asked if we could bring marshmallows this time. I told him he could bring 2 bags. The other day, I found a sticky note on my desk in Adam's handwriting. It just said, "Thanks for not giving up on me. You'll always be my dad." I kept that note in my wallet, right next to an old photo of his first soccer game. This isn't the life I thought I'd be living, but it's ours. It's honest, and it's stronger than any bloodline. No matter what comes next, I know we'll face it together, me and my son. Because sometimes, the family you fight for is the family that chooses you back.